One of the ways I try to differentiate us in the market is that we do staff augmentation, not agency delivery, because at the end of the day, I want to be 50% of the team that does this thing for my client forever. And the reason we'll do that is because we give them access to a wider range of skill sets at the same price point as one or two of their employees. And we can grow with them.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to the Small Business Mentor podcast, where we shine a light on the black holes of business growth with your host, Alan Pence. In each episode, we explore the leaps and bounds entrepreneurs make as they push their businesses beyond the 1 million mark into the realm of professional sustainable growth. Stay with us as we navigate the journey from brute force to finesse.
All right, a very exciting pod today with Michael Greenberg, who's got like one of these collection of companies around him. But right now, I think it's called ClickDown, soon to be rebranded as Third Brand. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Welcome to the pod.
We're about 50% ClickUp, 30% Airtable, 20% everything else. And I want to keep that mix.
So let me just kind of frame why you're on the pod. So a lot of times we'll break down industries, talk about how they work, what their margins are, all that kind of stuff. But today I really want to focus on what I think is going to be a crucial skill / capability or area of business that all businesses are going to have to pay attention to over the next few years, and particularly small business, which is what we call digital operations. So first, Michael, just kind of give us an overview of how you define digital ops.
So the broad strokes is digital ops is AI tools plus global talent plus automation. And the underlying idea is that you're designing processes and workflows and digital infrastructure in order to support the use of AI and automation and a global remote team to lower your cost structure and increase your task volume, increase the amount that you get done by having people not do things twice.
That's awesome. And I think what we're seeing is like, just before we got on, I was talking about Greg Crabtree, who the author of Simple Numbers. He's been tracking this 100 company model across all different kinds of companies all over the country and kind of aggregates their data. And one of the biggest trends he's seeing now is all labor was going through the roof during the late pandemic, so 21 into 22. But it really is clear now across his companies that direct labor is pretty much rising at the rate of revenue now, the cost of it. But it's really back office management and admin labor has been growing faster than revenue. And so our ability to manage our work is getting more and more expensive. And so the companies that can't do it well are just going to lose profitability and potentially go out of business. And this is where I think digital ops really plays a key role in helping you do that cheaper.
100%. I mean, the way I think about it is ultimately I am saving a customer either money directly by replacing something, saving them labor costs by increasing the speed at which something can be done, or we are increasing the right likelihood of some sort of new revenue action occurring as a result of a combination of eased workflow, so like more time for strategic thinking or preparation before meetings, or increased number of actions, be it sales follow-ups or just marketing content generated.
So tell us about how you actually do this. So like you come into a company, what do you do day one?
So first off, we're going to have a few calls with the customer before we even sign with them, just to make sure they have enough size and operational requirements that they're going to really benefit. Because if you're too small, then automating a task brings you very little gain because you're not doing the thing enough for it to really matter. You can spend 3 weeks building an onboarding automation, but if you're not onboarding one person every month, it's not going to be worth your time to build. So once we know that, then we're generally starting with a single department, and we're starting with one process inside of that department. And if that is a process that touches some sort of external customer, like a recruiting process or an onboarding process for sales after bringing on a customer, then we are going to follow that customer's journey. If it is a purely internal process, then we are going to follow the journey of the whatever piece of data or document format or project we are trying to track. And so we walk through that journey with as many people as we need to talk with. Generally, this is done in one-on-one interviews after initial like departmental kickoff. And we find out step by step by step how the process, how the workflow works. At that point, we can actually do something. We can start automating, we can start building tools, identifying the bottlenecks, the repeatable points, the places where the data is just moving from one form to another that we can automate. And we're combining all of that into one new simplified workflow.
Give me some examples, like what gets automated or what have you seen?
I'm going to use a sales process because I think everybody's got one, just as a demonstration. So in B2B sales, you're generally going to have some sort of pre-sale scoping period that comes from after the first touch. You've got discovery, and a lot of times what we're going to build is just a little AI sales call summarizer to take lead intake information or discovery call information, summarize it, and slot it into a CRM for the team. Then we're going to have an automated follow-up sequence or an automated notification that says, hey, you haven't followed up with this person in X amount of time. That just depends on the sales process, how high touch they want to be with a human. And we'll go on to the actual scoping phase. Inside of scoping for like a home services client, we're going to build out a specific quoting device. So some sort of form that their team can use to fill out and generate quotes and proposals. For more complex sales processes and like B2B services where they can get a lot more complex in the way they're delivered, we're going to build, again, just call summarizers essentially that help us keep the sale moving from stage to stage, help keep building out the scope as we go through. And we might have 2 or 3 different like call summarizing transcript processors that we use to build different pieces of the final scoping document for the proposal. And then we're going to take all that, generate a contract inside of some sort of signing system, and send the contract out to the client, make sure it gets signed.
That's close. Like that's almost verging on productization, or is it all just simple automation?
So I'm starting a new series of content, and this is something that you helped inspire me to start, where I'm just going to go look at tools in the market and be like, hey, I could rebuild this with these 3 automations and save you a little bit of time and a whole lot of money. And I think you are probably the one banging the drum more than anyone else that sort of what we're doing with digital ops now is building customized software and that it's going to eat the whole software stack. And I wholeheartedly agree because we are one of the firms that customers hire when they want to integrate every tool they use. If you're a $50 million a year holding company and you've got 40 locations and you want all of that information to get rolled up from your district managers into ClickUp or into some other tool and build out dashboards so you can monitor everything, we're one of the guys who figures out how to pull the data out of every tool and integrate it all to do that. And ultimately, everybody is just trying to cut costs wherever they can. And enterprise software, especially for like middle market enterprise software, is the champion of bloat inside of software budgets.
So, and we had kind of seen this in our company where, we'll onboard, I think we onboarded 80 people last year, some crazy amount. And, like there's all these systems, right? So like you hire someone, there's an offer letter, then they go into like a benefits system, they go into like, IT, they have to get a computer, and then there's like an onboarding process they go through. And so it like trigger, and there's like a different system for every single one of those activities. And so we found just this incredible number of hours spent just even, oh, person got hired, so then I got to send an email to this person to set up this. Whereas like now, once we go through this, that all just like there'll be an API call or like a Zap or something in between that, you kind of hire the person and then it goes through all the systems at once, right? And you just cut out all this nonsense and waste.
Exactly.
So where do you see the role for like offshore then? I mean, as opposed to automation?
Honestly, I've got a bunch of friends who own similar businesses. And obviously, we've got a bunch of clients that we're working with now. This is almost impossible to hire for, especially stateside. There are so few people who have the combination of business consulting expertise, operations specific expertise, and like the automation technical expertise. That's a role that I don't think you can fill if you're just looking in the States, at least not at a price that really makes sense for most organizations.
So you're actually seeing the offshore people doing the automation.
Oh, yeah. I want to say, like, when I'm talking offshore people, these are not your $800 a month kind of people. These are 50, 60, $70,000 a year offshore, former Accenture, PhDs, that sort of thing, where the same role in the US will cost you 150 to 200,000. You can get that person offshore for 60, 70,000.
And this person would be like a digital apps manager or something like that, or some version of that title.
Even just like an automation specialist to really understand workflows and understand what they're doing. But the most successful teams that we work with have one person inside of the company who is usually US based. They might come out of product, they might come out of project management, they might come out of operations, but they have the combination of technical expertise and business strategy expertise to sort of lead digital operations internally. That's who more I would think of as that director of digital operations. And then they're working with groups like mine or with individual contractors or with full-time team members onshore, offshore, who are fitting into what we call a draftsman role. So I think of it as like an architect who's designing infrastructure and making strategic decisions, then a draftsman who is making the diagrams, getting them approved and leading the implementation, and then specialists who are generally tool specific or like code base specific, where they are required for a very niche part of implementation.
And I guess beyond like just the automation piece, though, really like what I've been looking at is anything, almost anything back office outside of a few top roles, that I've been looking at it as like, okay, that we do tons of stuff where we're helping our project managers, supporting them on getting their financials in, getting their projections in, or we're getting the basic data on like a new opportunity to put in the pipeline. We're going out and doing basic research, basic data gathering. To me, so, there's some automation there, but really that's where I'm looking, hey, that needs to get offshored. And those people can learn that process and do it for you. And then your onshore back office people are doing the sales call, doing the teaming call in our case, or, like with recruiting, like the offshore people can be combing, whatever set of stuff you're going to use, Indeed, LinkedIn, blah, 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 and scheduling and qualifying and doing all that stuff, right? But it's really the onshore people. They're the ones who talk to the candidates. And so you kind of just like take everything offshore you can.
You'd be surprised what you can find offshore. Like you can hire a recruiter who is going to have a perfectly neutral American accent for 1,500 to 2,000 a month. And they could take those first calls right off your plate. You just going a little up in price, but it's still 70% of what you'd pay in the US for the same thing. Especially once you combine them with like a chatbot for a knowledge-based support, then suddenly you can get somebody up to speed quickly. They've got a little assistant on hand whenever they need a little help, and you can hand off quite a bit more.
Yeah, I do think this combination of AI with the offshoring is pretty powerful because it can really take somebody who might be like a C player normally because they're not there, there's a cultural issue, whatever it might be, don't have experience in your industry. And a chatbot can give them 85% of the answers, right? And all of a sudden they're like a B plus, A minus player. And both of us talk to Matzner a lot. I think, what I see is like, this is the only sustainable future because, we're not making more people here. We can't make any people. It takes 30 years to make a 30-year-old. So at least for the next 30 years, we're in trouble. And, you're going to have to fight to get that onshore talent and you got to save somewhere. So you're either going to have to ratchet up your prices a lot or you're going to have to go to automation and offshoring to try to pay your your onshore people more, keep the best talent, and then really focus them on the high value activity.
Yeah, I think we're going to see just a rise of smaller, more profitable teams maintaining or growing slowly after they hit like some sort of effective cap on size where it becomes too difficult to find new talent or find other pieces.
So you had mentioned the size needing to be of a size, so to kind of take this on from like maybe working with you, a company like yours, or so where do you see people, like, is it a number of employees? Is it a revenue figure? Is it kind of vary?
It's an either or. So I think like if you're below 5 employees, there's very little benefit in most cases. But really, like it's difficult to start getting significant like ROI until you're already in the low millions in revenue because you probably don't want to be spending like a really good team is going to cost you thousands a month and you don't want to be spending thousands a month on something if you can't make hundreds of thousands a month in return.
Right, exactly. In this category, I mean, it's basically, is it analogous to anything that came before? Would you say, oh, it didn't come out of like IT managed services. It didn't come out of, it seems like, is it new?
I think it didn't come out of them, but like it is IT managed services. From like a definitional standpoint, we are performing managed implementation of technology infrastructure. We just happen to be purely cloud focused with a totally different tool stack. But like I think it is very similar to that in the sense that it is a totally new set of business operations in technology that needs to be rolled out.
So you're the new MSP, managed service provider?
I would love to be that. Those guys printed money for what, like 30 years?
Yeah, well, I think you're going to do it. So, because I think, like I look at adoption of these, like, first of all, if you're coming into a company that already exists, if you have a smaller company and you're growing, I mean, I start hiring overseas right now and start automating as soon as possible because you're going to build a culture around it, which you'll be a lot better off. But, there's a lot of resistance in companies to going offshore and people feel threatened. They just don't want to deal. I mean, if they're not threatened and, they don't care about your long-term profitability. So, and then like on the AI side, I mean, you show people how amazing these tools are and they're like, oh, that's cool. And then they just never use them. So there is a huge problem with adoption. And that's why I think the sort of managed service where someone's coming in, making it, sticking the pieces together. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, I'll use that because it works.
One of the ways I try to differentiate us in the market is that we do staff augmentation, not agency delivery, because at the end of the day, I want to be 50% of the team that does this thing for my client forever. And the reason we'll do that is because we give them access to a wider range of skill sets at the same price point as one or two of their employees. And we can grow with them. I can just staff full-time people and still make it the same cost as a US-based employee or less and make sure they're up to speed and remove all that hassle from the client. And I think that allows the client's team to become more comfortable with my team because they're more deeply embedded, which allows training to go smoother. And ideally, when somebody has a problem, they're shooting them a Slack message. They're shooting them a G chat and saying, hey, I'm running into this issue. How do I edit my prompt? Or why isn't this automation firing when it should? And then we've got somebody right there who can handle it.
Which is really going to be like a small business, something's going to break, it doesn't fire, and then all this stuff breaks down and they're not going to know what to do. And they don't have an IT department, right? So that's really you guys. Tell me a little bit about how you're seeing AI starting to play out. Like, are your clients really using it? How are they using it if they are?
So I would say we see it inside of AI-powered workflows, and very rarely we see it as a chatbot. Automated project management system that reassigns based on workload every day, every week? Yes, that is an AI-powered system, but there is no chatbot on that. It's just pulling data out of a project management system and then pushing it back in. AI autoresponder So it's taking in like an intake form and then using that to customize a template, sending back out all day. Proposal generator, taking in a form, generating proposal anytime. But a chatbot that goes back and forth is just giving more opportunity for something to go wrong. And unless that chatbot is being used specifically for knowledge retrieval, we generally don't see it as a positive use case.
Interesting. So what you're really saying is like, I want to give you like, or what people really want is like, I want a narrow sort of chatbot that just does this thing, like spits out an automated response, right? It's not, I guess it's not a chatbot, but it's just like a function. So are you like building that on top of ChatGPT?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And what, it's just like a web form or something that they,
Different teams, different tools. We've got like a lot of sales teams like to use voice notes from WhatsApp or Slack. And so that way they just drop a voice note and then this AI assisted workflow transcribes it, matches it to the sales calls they were having that day. It figures out what client is this voice note related to, cleans it up, drops it as a note in the CRM.
but that's using like a ChatGPT to do that.
So that would be like Slack to a chat GPT to transcribe. And then via API, it would transcribe it. It would reformat it. And then it would like call out to HubSpot and call out to that salesperson's calendar and be like, hey, HubSpot, hey, calendar, who was he meeting with? And then sync it.
Wow. Okay. So that was surprising to me. That and so just like you think that the general chatbot like it's too open for people to know how to use it. Is that
Like most people, most teams are not willing to understand prompt engineering well enough and understand how the technology works well enough to really get massive use out of it. And if anything, they end up getting frustrated by it in certain cases. So, like, if you give them a prompt library, that's a different matter. But every prompt is really just a step in a piece of software or a step in a workflow that could be expanded upon.
you're creating like I might like let's say it's a GPT or so. Are you guys doing GPTs at this point?
Oh, yeah.
So you're structuring like structured prompts, but you're giving them to their mind, this thing is for one thing. It's solving X problem and you do Y and then you get an answer. It's not just some chatbot that you go ask and try to structure. Is that the idea?
Yeah. So, like, for my content operations setup, we've got a specific writer for each type of content we want to produce because each one has a different workflow it will go through and it has a different set of inputs and a different set of outputs.
By writer, you mean bot.
Yeah. Or like not even a bot at that point. It's like a series of prompts. So it's a whole workflow. And so the one that writes a case study for me is totally different from the one that writes my LinkedIn posts.
And are you finding that you can upload source documentation to the GPT, right? To have it reference. Are you finding that like really gets it to answer more like you, or
So it's a multi-step process.
it's not easy, I don't think.
I generally start with a question answer pair, and then that generates a first draft. And then that first draft is going to be run through like a brand voice rewriter. And then it'll have some final step of formatting editing. And that's sort of the simplest form.
You're kind of like making very specific tools like a bot, just for the sake of argument here. And like then sending the content over to another one that's very specific on this side, rather than trying to build that all into like a series of prompts for ChatGPT.
Yeah. Do you cook?
I do.
So you're not going to use a spoon to do a whisk's job.
But this is supposed to be this LLM that does everything.
Well, no, that's the thing is like LLMs aren't good at doing everything. They're good at doing very specific things. And you can teach them to get really good at one thing at a time. But these are not general tools in the sense they are knives, but I'm going to pick up a different knife. I'm going to pick up Claude 3 Sentoku when I want to do fine precision cuts with creative writing instead of the GPT-4 chef's knife that I might use every day.
I've tried this with like Twitter content, right? Writing my tweets. And I'll do like, I'll get a transcript from the guys doing it, like will interview me. I'll get the transcript. And I tried to build a GPT a couple of times in different ways to like take it, here's my style, here's this, here's that. And what I find is it's usually pretty good at like pulling out an idea, but then it can't fill it out and it can't like make it into like what I give it an example, but it can only do like one of the things. It can't then go back and do this, then go. So I'm wondering, that might be an interesting use case to try. Like maybe like it's like, hey, it's really good at coming up with the first line, and then you got to send it to Claude to like fill it out.
So about 90% of my content is AI written now on Twitter. And we take templates that we know work, we cross them with those question answer pairs. And as we've narrowed down the set of question answer pairs, so the source material we're working with, the message, we've seen the engagement go up. So it's been pretty straightforward to this point where it's like, okay, we know when the message gets better, the templates we're using are already pretty good. So we are generating consistently better and better and better content.
It's impressive. I mean, I guess what are other, like I don't think trying to build like a single GPT works very well for me, at least. It hasn't.
No, it just doesn't work. That's not what it's made for.
But then, what your alternative is to what? Try to go train your own LLM? Like that's, I don't know. What does that cost? 300K or something like?
No, it costs like $5.50
to train your own LLM.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to like train a brand new one. You want to just like fine tune an open source one that's already good.
So if I want to make tweets, should I go train my own LLM, fine tune it?
That's my next step personally. That's the way you get it to write closer to your voice.
So you go take like a llama that might have been optimized for like composition or creative writing or something like that, or social media. Could that be possible? And then you kind of fine tune it to you.
So I would probably use multiple again. So like you would want one that is fine tuned to like what is viral content in the past 30 days or past 90 days. And then you'd want one that is like tuned specifically to your voice and your approved content. And so then you would generate something that was viral, and then you would generate something that it was more on your voice by transforming that viral content.
And you're saying this is not crazy expensive to do?
No, this is the kind of thing where a client will hire us and we'll be like, okay, give us 3 to 4 weeks.
Now, that's obviously going to need to iterate as these models change right over time.
Yeah. And that's sort of like some of these things are like, we will not build it if it's going to take us more than maybe a month or two to build because the speed of technology is too fast. But like, yeah, we can train a couple models and throw them into an existing content workflow.
For me, I read about this all day long. I had no idea that I could do that at that price level, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, this is like, I think everyone should have at least 1 or 2 dedicated, like just GPT AI team members where all they're doing is like they're some 20-year-old who's fascinated by this stuff that you hire in the Philippines. And he or she is just going to be ecstatic to be playing with this stuff all day.
Well, Michael, you're going to help us hire that person.
I hired that person for myself and I've been loving it. So there's a really cool tool called Crew AI. And the way it works is it's for orchestrating a team of agents. So like you could have your ghostwriter and your editor and your hook writer and your content strategist, and then they could all collaborate either in parallel or one after another. You can define how they collaborate in the process, and that's free.
That's crazy. So, all right. So we're off in AI world, but I mean, I think this is why I find the managed service provider aspect so crucial, right? Like, yeah, we're going to be able to hire someone in the Philippines or LATAM who's got some, interest in this and they can help us. But they're just never, I don't think those kind of people are going to be able to stay at the cutting edge. We're not going to be investing in that kind of talent. So that's why you need this partner who's going to always have that. They can amortize the cost over a lot of clients and then keep this stuff up to date. Because like I said, I could create a Twitter generator today that, in a year or two is a piece of crap, right? Because everybody else has gone to like version 12.
And in 3 months, in 2 months, if you're just one generation of models behind, if you're on GPT 3.5 instead of 4, you're not creating good enough content to use.
So this is why I say most companies just have to figure out how to get on this train. And I think it's coming because I feel like this is going to, I've said this many times, but the people who adopt this in an industry, right? So say like they create these little, chat assist things, or maybe they're not bots, but they're kind of narrow focus. So like recruiting and HR and blah, blah, blah. So now I can hire offshore people and they can operate at the level of my onshore competitor and like at 25% the cost, right? And then I can go out and surface more sales opportunities because I've got either global talent looking through stuff, but they're AI assisted, they're able to scrape more stuff. So at a certain point, you're getting to this thing where you're going to be able to cut your prices, sell more, make more money, and pay your best people more all at the same time. And like when your competitor does that, they're just going to crush you. They're going to be able to come in 20% lower and still pay their best people more than you and make the same. Maybe they make the same profit in that case.
Then they're going to end up with better people. And then I think it's probably not a 1 year thing, but over like 5 years, they just pull ahead. It's Max Verstappen on the track versus his competitors.
I agree. And I think like companies like yours are going to have to proliferate to serve this community. I guess the big guys have got internal, they've got Accenture coming in, trying to do something like this or whoever.
I'm not even sure. Everyone I know at this point is still very much agency or consultant model, because I have one friend who runs like a membership staff aug model. They only work with Fortune 1000, and he's staffing like one team member to one client, 100% capacity for that sort of work. And he's blown up, but he's still only hiring 1 or 2 a year.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So like get back to our Twitter creator, right? It's not a one and done kind of thing. It's not a custom product in the sense of like, I guess that's before that, people would buy off the shelf software or they'd bring in outside people to build something for them. Now what we're really being able to do is kind of build on the fly without the cost that you used to have to incur, like the amount of brain damage it would take to build anything effective. And it sounds like to me, you're building close to products with automations, but you have to change the mind frame from I'm going to build a product, use it, build another product, use it, to like, I have a bunch of productized services or whatever they are.
Microservices.
Yeah, microservices that I've constantly got to update and manage.
And that's what nobody wants to do. I have a former client who has recently been emailing me that everything is broken inside of their dashboarding. They canceled with us several months ago, and we told them, make sure you follow these instructions exactly as we have written them out, including these step-by-step videos, and nothing will break. This is how you add every new thing. And so if you are reaching out to us, we know you did not follow the instructions, because the system will keep working 100% of the time. They are in the rare minority of cases where we can like send somebody off like that. With newer tools, it's not possible, but they were just using click up and go high level. So it was much simpler.
Well, I also think like there's a role, I guess, where you could say there's a world play out where like most of the AI you're doing or automation comes from some vertical piece of software. So like your Salesforce implementation or your something else like that, right?
Your partner management platform, your contract management platform, very common ones.
And I think there's a role for that and it will survive for a long time. But it just feels like those are so inflexible. And if you're able to kind of build this stuff that's highly personalized and you're just able to constantly, you're able to ship every 3-4 weeks and you can kind of run it. And then as the tech improves, you immediately go back and update it. Just like feels like you're going to be a lot more nimble and fast, or you're not going to be stuck with these. You're not going to want to have Salesforce because it's just like slow. And I talk to people who are like, if something's wrong with their dashboard, they have to like get the BI expert in from like corporate and like have them get hours from them. It's like, oh my God. Like that just feels like as we go forward, we'll just be able to create software on the fly and not have to go through these big systems.
I think 80% of internal software is some combination of forms and dashboards. And for that stuff, absolutely. For something like a CRM, that is probably the most common thing that we build, is some sort of complex CRM or customer management system customized to a client. People want those to be custom. And there's a lot of little custom ones that exist right now. And if they don't handle every single thing, we can rebuild it for $10,000 in Airtable and then maintain it with like a once a quarter or once a year set of updates. And that's way more cost effective.
Yep, exactly. That's probably about the price point of a year, 15K, 20K for like a medium size, like a 20, $30 million company.
Oh, I mean, try a $5 million company is going to be spending that in a lot of cases.
Yeah, it's probably true. Probably true. I haven't been a $5 million company in a long time, so my knowledge is skewed. So it does sound fascinating, like how this is going to play out. What do you recommend for somebody who's just starting to think of it? Maybe they can't afford the thousands a month to kind of really dive deep, but like what's like low hanging fruit for people, do you think?
I think the easiest, like lowest hanging stuff is start implementing just a basic prompt library, start tracking what works for your team so that way you can start using it more. And then if you can afford $1,000 a month, go and pick ClickUp or Smartsheet or Airtable as a core tool. It's got to be a database focused tool, not like Notion. It's too document focused for this. Choose Make as your automation center and then add on Zapier when you need it at some point. And that's going to cost you like $100 a month. Then go spend the rest and hire somebody who's really interested in this and buy them like 5 courses and just have a little automation assistant next to you who can build 1 and 2 step automations to move things between point A and point B. And you're going to find so much opportunity just with that.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, Michael, we appreciate having you on today. If people are interested in doing this, maybe signing up, what's the best way to reach out to you?
So you can find me on Twitter at GentofTech, GentofTech. You can reach out to me there, follow me there, or check out clickdown.xyz. That's clickdown.xyz and see my what is probably still an outdated website. But you can book a call with me and we can get on and chat and see how I can help make you and save you a lot of money.
Just on that, actually, have you been able to document increased productivity, cost cutting? Like, what do you guys usually see from people? Or what do people report?
So after about 6 months of work, if we're projecting out the following year, we're generally at between a 200 and 300% ROI. It's pretty easy as long as we're automating things that are going to take up, 10, 20 hours. If we're automating 20 hours of monthly work every month, that adds up very quickly. Then we're automating, 1.5 people a year.
Right. I mean, if you think about it that way, it's pretty incredible, right? And that's a compounding benefit.
Yeah. And that's sort of the lower end of the spectrum, I think. Just when, personally, I know there's a 5-step sales automation that responds to every inbound lead from ClickUp's partner portal that I have. And that one automation saves me, at least 2 hours a week. But more importantly, it generates, because of the speed of response time is 20 minutes after they submit, it's generating 2 to 3 qualified leads every week and upwards. In 2023, it made me something like 180,000. And so 2024, I think it'll probably do 2 or 3 times that.
And that's something you can make and didn't take you very long to build or deploy.
It took me an hour to make. And otherwise, I'd be paying, in order to get that same quality from like a human team, I would need 2 or 3 people full time to cover a 24/7 sales response.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah. And so that's just something I couldn't do without it. And it's such a massive ROI that if I can hit one home run like that for a client in a year, we're golden.
Your competitors are going to go start doing this stuff. And I don't know if you saw the Klarna, they're doing a little bit more in depth, like building models and stuff, but they got, for their customer service line, they got response time from 11 minutes to 2 minutes, maintained the same customer satisfaction score, and they got rid of 700 agents, 2/3 of their customer service department, and did it faster at the same consistency, the same quality, and they saved tens of millions of dollars. I mean, this just like, it's coming.
I've got their report, 40 million in profit improvement.
40 million in profit improvement for something that probably cost them a few hundred K. You just don't see you're talking 300% returns. And I think you're being pretty conservative there. These kind of returns are not available anywhere else in your business.
I'll give you an example. A client that I fired, in fact, about a month and a half ago. So we've got honesty as a core value internally. And a client lied that they were making almost a million X return on the investment on a project we were doing with them. They told us that they were only going to make like 1,000X return. So I was like, okay, we're not going to price it extravagantly, but they were just low. They were like just straight up lying when their new director came in and I onboarded with him. And so we canceled the next day.
But they were making a million X return.
They were going to. Look, you guys were nickel and diming me on the price of this thing, and you're going to make how much within a month of launch? No, this is clear violation of values.
I think it's one of these things. Once you get some of it, you're just going to be like, give me more, because it's just so clearly going to be better.
They were a 70 million a year company. They could have paid us $100,000 to build it, and they wanted to pay a lot less than that. And they were going to make 6 million the first year from it.
Wow. I mean, those kind of returns are just not available in the marketplace for anything that you're going to do beyond. Yeah. You run a good business and you sell stuff and you deliver it and you make a good return on the capital invested. But anything else in your business doesn't get that kind of return. Like when you invest in software, even when you invest in new salespeople, right? It takes forever, blah, 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 blah. Not that you shouldn't do those things, but like there's just very few things where it's like, I can put in $1 and it'll basically get me back 3 for perpetuity. This is a very unique time. And I think I've just hadn't seen anything like it in my lifetime. So I should shut up about this and shut it down. But I'm highly recommending everybody get out there and start looking at this.
I look at like friends and family. I think most people are just going to let this pass them by. They're like, I'm far enough in my career. I've got 5 years left. It's going to take 5 to 10 to adopt this thing. So I'm going to be able to clock out before it does.
Cool. Well, Michael, thank you for your time today.
Thank you. It's been awesome.
You've been listening to the Small Business Mentor podcast, brought to you by Alan Pence. For more insights on how to navigate your business through its black holes, visit @apence on X. Don't forget to search for Small Business Mentor in your podcast app to subscribe. Thank you for joining us, and here's to your next leap in business growth.